Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sport Network. We have a great show for you today. We will be covering Bayern Munich officially announcing Vincent Kompany as manager. Same thing with Barcelona announcing Hansi Flick as manager. I'll discuss Real Madrid's journey to the final and how do they make sure there is no slip up in the final. And I assess France's chances to win their first Euros with this new generation of players. And make sure you stick around for later in the show. I'll be giving you my thoughts on some of the transfer rumors going on in the world of football. Before we start, I'd like to ask that you like and follow the show. Also, we get a number of questions that come in during the show, so to ensure that your questions get read on the air, I ask that you use the tips and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net with your questions. This puts your questions at the top of the list so that I can see it, and it also really helps to grow the show. So again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. Before we start off with the first segment, though, I'd like to introduce Manny and Kenneth. They will be back here today, the second time in these past 2 weeks. So thank y'all for being on. And how are y'all doing?
Doing well.
Yeah, thanks for having us on again, Emran. This should be fun.
Yes, of course. Well, we have to start off with Bayern Munich. They have officially named Vincent Kompany as their manager. Whoever would like to go first, what are your thoughts on that?
I'll start with just saying, it was a little bit surprising. I think, speaking for everyone, I think the general reaction to it was pretty out of the blue. Just because you look at Vincent Kompany, all he did with Burnley, everyone's going to look at the record real quick and look at how poor they did because they did get relegated. But I don't know. I thought it was something different. I think I'm a fan of just seeing something different happen with some of these managerial hires. It's definitely something they're not used to doing, but I thought he did all right, just his demeanor, and I didn't pay too much attention to Burnley, honestly. So I don't know. It should be interesting. In Germany, it's not too competitive. It's getting there, but I don't think compared to the Prem, where I think all the teams are very hard to come by and get a win. I think this should be a good challenge for Kompany, and why not for Bayern try something different? I like the move.
Yeah, I was again, an outsider when it comes to the sport. I know with the other coaching hire we'll talk about, their resume does look better than Kompany here, and I know from at least some of the clips I was watching, just to kind of get a little bit of an understanding of the hire, there were some reports that he was like their eighth choice, which I thought was interesting, that it got all the way to that point where they were like, all right, this is who we're going to settle for. So I don't know if you guys have any insight on who were the other choices and who they maybe could have gotten that could have been better with a better track record. But that was just one thing that I thought was interesting, that he was their eighth choice, and that's what they ended up settling for. So I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point you make, in the fact that it is their eighth choice. There was plenty of managers that they went after, including Roberto De Zerbi, Olivier Glasner from Crystal Palace. They tried to reconvince Thomas Tuchel to sign on again. There was many coaches that they went after that it just didn't go through, and it's really in a weird position a club of Bayern stature find themselves in, getting rejected over and over and over again by these managers. But as far as Kompany, he is an inexperienced manager. What he did last season, he played very, very good football, but he had the best players in the league. And I think he's walking into a sort of similar situation, walking into Bayern. That's the one similarity. With Burnley, with the players that he had in the Premier League, he was up against it. He's not going to be up against it with the players that he will have entering at Bayern. He's going to have relatively, more compensation. But you make a very, very good point. This does seem like a desperation hire, in the fact that it is their eighth or so choice, and it's really not the way how Bayern club should operate. But there is room here. It's very risky. I mean, it's beyond risky. I think, Benny, you're trying to say something.
Yeah, I mean, it is risky. You make a good point though, to just the fact that he is cutting into this situation now. With Burnley before, he didn't really have the players to really do much with it. I know it's kind of like a cop out, just blaming the players that he has. But in a way, it's a good situation for someone to start with at Burnley. If he was able to impress with somebody, yeah, this move would make sense. But at the same time, we talked about before, it was the fact that they did get relegated, throughout the whole Premier League season with no European football either to worry about. He did end up getting relegated, so that also does speak to the job he has done a little bit. Now you have to deal with the domestic championships, European football, and really Vincent Kompany doing that all for the first time as a manager. It's going to be interesting to see how he handles all of it. And there is a bit of me where, they didn't win. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they won anything this past season. So there are low expectations, but I don't think that's anything to really sniff at because they are Bayern, so they are expected to win every year. So while they're coming off a bad season, those expectations are still there for him to handle.
And let's get this straight. Relatively, Bayern are off multiple bad seasons. Last year they did win the Bundesliga, but it took them the final day and it took Borussia Dortmund handing it to them. And they finished last season, I believe, in the 69, 70 point mark. Very similar to where they are now, but with the fact that Leverkusen and how much they improved the season, going the whole league unbeaten, running away with it. That was the main thing. And then, they reached the semifinals in the Champions League, was really close to getting to the final. But, I mean, for Bayern and their expectation, it has been poor. It's been very poor. And I think bringing in a guy like Kompany is a very, very risky thing to do. And it could go horribly, horribly wrong, or it could go amazingly well. My main thing that would also concern me if I'm Vincent Kompany in position is that you have a manager looking over your shoulder, whether or not he wants it or not. That's a whole different conversation. But at the end of the day, it's going to take 1 or 2 bad results next year for the Jurgen Klopp names to start appearing. It's going to take, with him, not having, just sitting on his couch, he did come out and say he might not coach football ever again or something like that. That's just words. At the end of the day, it doesn't stop the rumors from happening. I compare this similar to at the end of the season, the Cowboy season, whenever they kept Mike McCarthy. I'm just saying right now, it's going to take 1 or 2 games, bad losses, for the Bill Belichick name to be mentioned. And that's just what it is whenever you have a great coach, especially in this case, a great German coach, which the next step in his career is to go to a club like Bayern. That's something I think is going to be a lot of a burden on Vincent Kompany. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, the other thing I was going to say too is, Emran, what you said about, them taking a risk with someone that's inexperienced. I feel like a lot of times it's not even just, with this sport, it's pretty much with a lot of sports. You see, with American sports, teams taking chances on guys that have a lack of experience. Now, you got to get your experience somehow, but it does come with the risk, like you said, where some individuals have no business being a head coach or a manager, but they just get the shot because they do well in an interview. They do something. They bring something to the table that just impresses a team. Yeah, exactly. But that was more of just, hey, the players want him because they could do whatever they want.
And he had a relationship with the GM, I believe, too.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sean Marks. But yeah, sorry for cutting you off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, all good. It's just that's always just going to come with it. It's just we see teams taking risks and bringing in guys that are inexperienced, and sometimes it works out, and then other times it's not going to work out, and you just are going to have to own up to it, and you're going to have to move on. Now, this could be something. This might not be a long-term thing where maybe he's gone immediately, or maybe it pans out, but we don't know until we actually see it for ourselves.
And also, And also, you can't. Number one, Bayern can't expect this to be like a Xabi Alonso who's came in and did something remarkable in his first full season at Leverkusen, going unbeaten. They can't build that unrealistic expectations. My thing is, I see Eric, he commented talking about how young and ambitious Company is, and that's what Bayern sport director said it was one of the main factors. But why then, whenever they were going through these phases of trying to get a manager, Ralf Rangnick, he was one of the top options. That's not somebody. So if this is your goal of getting someone young and ambitious, why was Ralf Rangnick 60? I believe he's 65 or something of that sort. Why is he an option? Why is he up there? I just think that's just words to defend their decision in Vincent Kompany. That's just my opinion. But I don't want to be too harsh, because I think what Kompany did with Burnley first season is very impressive in the championship, and I think what he did in the championship, having the better players, is what he's gonna face in the Bundesliga. He will have the best players in the league just by nature. That's what Bayern is. But is he a manager to manage those kind of egos, that kind of talent, and get them over the top? It remains to be seen. If anyone wants to close off this segment real quick.
Just on that point, I think what he does bring is that he has played relatively soon. He just finished playing, I feel like. So the players that he will be managing, you get some respect there, because I'm sure most of them have actually played against them. So you get some respect there. But also, I think for Bayern, that I'll just mention here to close it out, is that when you get these young, ambitious managers, the opportunity you have here now with him is someone that you could, I don't want to say control, but somebody that you have the power over now to say, hey, this isn't working 2 months in. And people wouldn't really crucify you for moving on from him too quickly, because they are young, they are ambitious. If you just say, hey, it didn't work, no one would blame you for moving on in a week or two, rather than getting an experienced coach who would probably want maybe more guaranteed years or a bigger contract or something like that. You take less of a risk with Vincent Kompany. Two, in case it doesn't work out, you could just move on and say, this didn't work out. We're just going to look for somebody else halfway through the year, and nobody would really point the finger at them too harshly, I believe. That's another reason why maybe Vincent Kompany got this opportunity over some more experienced guys like you mentioned there, Emran.
We're going to take a short break here. When we come back, we're going to discuss Barcelona officially appointing Hansi Flick as manager.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign.
Before the break, we discussed Bayern officially naming Vincent Kompany as manager. We move on to discuss Barcelona, Manny's team. They have officially appointed Hansi Flick as manager. He said this is the direction they wanted to go. He wanted them to go last week, changing up to tradition of Barcelona Football Club. So I think we should start off with him. Manny, what are your thoughts on this move?
Yeah, I think instead of the other options to go with Hansi Flick, I was a fan of it. There was some Thomas Tuchel talks in there, maybe some Rafa Marcus ones as well. But again, those didn't really sit well with me, quite honestly. I think Thomas Tuchel, it would have been different, but it didn't sit well with how the season went with Bayern. Yeah, they almost made it to the Champions League final, but that wasn't really the direction I would have thought that was appropriate for them. And even with Rafa Marquez, again, like you mentioned, I said that pretty much the same style there, former player, being the coach of Barcelona. It was going to be the same story, I feel like. So now you bring in a guy that's very different. And I think it's funny how they bring in a guy that's very different to their style, and people raise the question now of doing it. But if they would have hired somebody that came from their system to play the same style, they would have questioned even that and say that they're just doing the same thing. So it is funny how it just works in, I guess, against them in either direction. But overall, I think it's a good choice to go with Flick. You know, he won a lot of trophies with Bayern. Barca would know. They beat him 8-2 in the Champions League. So they're very familiar with him and how he played in that game. And I think it's a good hire to change it up a little bit. He's a proven winner, and hopefully he just continues it on at Barca.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, so I know I was looking at some things he had to say, article on ESPN.com. He talked about how, like, his philosophy with Barcelona is kind of similar, really attacking the football. He said that's something that he loves. So kind of bringing that over. And it seems like he's really embracing this opportunity. And I guess the other thing I did see, too, is he was fired from the German national team following the exit at the 2022 World Cup, and they experienced some poor results in that tournament. So is there any kind of concerns that you guys may have with that? Will that rear its ugly head here, or is that something that we could kind of push to the side and leave that in the past?
I think it's yes, maybe there might be a little bit room of concern based on, you know, the fact that they were getting outplayed by teams that they had more talent than, and that was just not in the World Cup. That was also in the friendlies after that ended up leading to his firing. But at the same time, you know, club football and international football is totally different. You have much more time in club football to implement your style and tactics and all that. And, you know, what is something Barcelona fans can hold on to is the fact that the last time he was managing club football, you know, he was very, very successful with Bayern. So that's the thing. My thing that I would, and it is a different style. Hansi Flick, compared to the some of the Barcelona managers in the past, ever since, you know, I remember Barcelona always had the roots of the Johan Cruyff football, of, you know, possession-oriented, tiki-taka style of play. They kind of did that almost before the Spanish national team even was able to adopt that within their team. That led to the greatest national team of all time, in my opinion. They've always had that style of play, very possession-oriented. That's what Xabi Alonso, he plays similar. He would have fit the mold of that kind of Barcelona manager, but, you know, he'll never manage Barcelona because he's a Real Madrid. He's a Madrista. But Hansi Flick, yes, he plays attacking football. We're not there. Barcelona are not going all the way, you know, 360. This is not a defensive style of football like a Conte coming in would do, or a Jose Mourinho. It's still attacking football, but it's the way that they attack is different. You know, Spain, Spanish in general, Barcelona, they've always relied on the creativity of their midfielders, of like Xavi and Iniesta. And with this style of play, with Hansi Flick came in, which was really started with Ralf Rangnick, and then we saw Jurgen Klopp do it famously at Liverpool. You know, the main creativity is winning the ball high up the field with pressing, and that being your form, and then being close to the goal, that being your form of creativity. And that's kind of the shift that Barcelona is kind of make here. And I think it's very, very interesting to see Barcelona play that kind of style. Manny, what's your thoughts?
No, yeah, you make a good point, both of you. Just on the way that this could sort of change it up a little bit. Yeah, it's like you mentioned, Kenneth, it is attacking football, and I think a lot of times the problem where you would see with Barcelona and in some of their games is that I feel like they always worried about making it look nice rather than, you know, getting the win and getting the results that really just matter in the end. Because a lot of times, if you watch some of those games, it might seem a little boring because they're just passing the ball horizontally back and forth trying to break down a defense. And I think a lot of times they're just trying to overdo it too much rather than, I don't know, maybe shooting from further out or just being more direct with it and getting results that way. They focused on a little bit just making it look nice and winning, which is a hard thing to do. Obviously, it worked in the past, but now they haven't really adapted like all these other teams have, and I think that was really the biggest problem. And hopefully with Hansi Flick, they could sort of adapt it a little bit, and he does play a similar style with possession, and hopefully he just makes it a little bit more direct because you are competing now with Real Madrid, and if they do get Mbappe, that's a very, very tough challenge for not just Barcelona and Spain, but for everybody in Europe. So you have the challenge of competing with them, and if you don't get the results, it's going to be very heavy and very loud in Barcelona for Hansi Flick and the rest of the team if Real Madrid just keeps winning. You guys are still struggling.
Yeah, and even with changing it up, this doesn't magically fix the financial issues that Barcelona has, and which still prevents them from being able to compete with Real Madrid or the top teams in the Champions League. That's something I just wanted to throw out there. It doesn't prevent that.
Now, where does their former coach now end up, or is he? What's his situation?
Well, I feel like he got a little bit of a raw deal. I think what he was able to do last year in winning La Liga was a very good accomplishment in my opinion. And this season he goes on a run where they play some good football. They end up getting eliminated in the Champions League because of a red card, but this they were kind of getting it back into the right direction, and then he makes a comment here and it just boom, just like that, now he's fired again. And that's also a main thing, a concern I have with Barcelona is at the top. If you have this sort of emotional roller coaster running this operation of, trying to beg someone to come back and be the manager of a team, to within a span of 2 weeks wanting to fire him because of comments that he made, which was absolutely just the reality of what it is, it makes me a little concerned. Is this the guy at the top to be able to run this team in financial hardship right now? Is he the guy that can bring this team back to their glory days? I'd be very, very concerned as a Barcelona fan.
That's a good question you bring up. That has been really the some of the, I guess, the spotlight has been pointed that way towards their president Joan Laporta. But again, if you look at the contract, it is like a 2-year deal, so it kind of gives him the opportunity again to not stick with Hansi Flick too often if this does get not the way that he hopes it to happen. But again, back to what Kenneth was saying with Xavi now, where he goes, it'll be interesting because of just he went to the top so quickly. He was managing a team that he played for in Saudi, I believe, and now he got really just skyrocketed into one of the top clubs in Europe. To see where he goes now, I'm pretty sure it's probably only going to be downward now compared to the level of play.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, like where he goes, it's going to be still pretty tricky too because of how the situation ended up and the relationship with Joan Laporta. Like you mentioned, Emran, there, he says some things maybe the president doesn't like. Does that play into a factor with the future club and how they, analyze what it would mean to bring him in, if he's too big of a character maybe, and how his style fits somewhere else? Is he too tied to playing like Barcelona, or can he adapt his way of playing? I think that'll be interesting, and I would like to see him coach again because, like you said again, he did a remarkable job winning the league in like his first year there with the financial situations that this club has, competing with Real Madrid. I think that was remarkable, but again, people are always just going to want more and more results to come your way. Trophies, like you mentioned last episode, Emran, are required at a club like Barcelona, especially competing with Real Madrid. So it was tough. I think it was too early for him, but now he still has a good opportunity. He's still super young to get another chance somewhere else.
Yeah, I think he's proved enough that he's a good manager, at least. Now, he's not going to go in and he's not going to get another top job. Like some of these top jobs available right now, like Chelsea or something, like, forget about it. He's not going to he's not going to get one of those. I think the biggest opportunity he has is maybe go on one of the top flight teams in the lower half and, help them come up. Or, I say this, I think this would be a great move, not just for him, but also this team. If they were to happen to, lay the egg at the Euros and Luis de la Fuente would get sacked, I think a good opportunity for him is going into the Spanish national team and revitalize that young core that they have. I think that could be a good move with them, with the style of play. It kind of fits the Spanish mold. Well, this is the end of this segment. I just wanted to thank y'all for being on. So Kenneth and Manny, thank y'all so much. I'm gonna take a short break here. When we come back, I'm gonna discuss Real Madrid's journey to the final and how do they make sure that there is no slip up. Thank you guys.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we discussed Barcelona officially appointing Hansi Flick as manager. We move on to discuss Real Madrid's journey to the final and how do they make sure there is no slip up in this final. Real Madrid, the story of Real Madrid, the story of the miraculous comebacks, the story of the clutch Champions League moments that will be talked forever and ever. And it seems like they do this all the time. And, it's just the history of Real Madrid. It's their culture. When it comes to most Champions League titles, they are number one in the world. And it's not even close. It's not even close. There's only been 22 clubs that have won a Champions League in general, but they have 14 on their own. Let me say this again. 22 teams have won at least a Champions League. Only 22 teams, but they've won 14 on their own. Their number one was 14, double the second place with Milan, which has 7, and they're going for their 15th title this season. In this final against Borussia Dortmund, and it's on the basis they won the Premier League this season, La Liga this season, finishing with 95 points, 29 wins, 8 draws, and 1 loss, almost doing it unbeaten, scoring 87 goals while conceding 26 with a whopping goal differential of 61. They've just been absolutely phenomenal this season. They've done it this season without a striker or an out-and-out striker that, is good enough to start games. They really relied on the team collectively with the goals when it comes to Vinicius and Rodrigo. Their two attacking, their pace that they have up front, interlinking, playing different positions, being very, very clinical with their opportunities, especially Rodrigo. Earlier in the season, Jude Bellingham having the capacity to run into the box, be in the right place at the right time, scored the loads of goals that he had from midfield, having some like a Frank Lampard-esque season, I believe reaching with 19 goals, a ridiculous mark for a midfielder that he never shown this capabilities of goal scoring at Borussia Dortmund, but he's come in and playing a little bit more of an advanced position, and he's been absolutely brilliant. The way that they've done it has been very quite remarkable, quite impressive. Ancelotti is a brilliant coach. When it comes to this Champions League that they've had this season, it's been what Real Madrid does best. They won their Champions League group. When we first started off, we looked at the group and said, wow, Real Madrid and Napoli in one group is going to be one hell of a group. But Napoli really fell off tremendously throughout the season. And it happened to, they gave Real Madrid a little bit of few concerns, especially in the leg at Naples. But apart from that, not much in that group. Real Madrid finished 6 wins, 0 draws, 0 loss, maxing out with 18 points. And then in the Champions League, in the round of 16, they took on a Leipzig. Brahim Diaz scored a wonder goal in the first leg, and that kind of opened it up for them. In the second leg, Leipzig actually had an opportunity to send it to extra time. They were kind of pressuring Real Madrid, but Real Madrid were able to do what they do best, hold on, get past. And then they took on, in the quarterfinal, was the tie that everybody was talking about, playing against Manchester City. And it was very different to how it won last season. It seemed like last season, in both legs, they were kind of on the back foot. But in this first leg, Real Madrid were kind of going end to end with Manchester City. And Manchester City would score a goal, but Real Madrid, they wouldn't panic. They would score 2. Man City would go ahead and take the lead again, 3-2. And Real Madrid didn't panic and get a third. And it just seemed like Real Madrid, they always, even when they were on their down moments, they never put their head down. They always put in, and it took a lot of mental resilience in that tie. They ended up moving on and that first leg, 3-3, taking it to Manchester City, where they ended up getting the early breakthrough through Rodrigo, and you would just think, wow, that's just where Real Madrid want to be in. And then Real Madrid suffer like no other team is able to suffer and still persevere the way that they suffered. They conceded the goal in the 76th minute by De Bruyne. It took them that breakthrough to get in, but a lot of teams in that position, once that breakthrough happens after defending for your lives, and after you concede, it's kind of, you're kind of done at that point. It happened similarly to Real Madrid Bayern in that second leg that we're going to discuss in a bit. You're fully expecting Real Madrid to, fall out, but they continue to be resilient. They continue to defend well. They continue to keep a foot on the ball, and they take it to penalties. And when you take it to penalties, you just give yourself an opportunity. And that's what Real Madrid did. They gave themselves an opportunity. And when you look at the players that they have some of the most clutch players. There are top performers in these moments. And when you have those kind of players and you're in a penalty shootout, you trust those kind of players. And, they ended up, winning that penalty shootout to move on to the semis against Bayern. And in the semis against Bayern, first leg, they take advantage of 2 defensive bad mistakes by Kim Min-jae. And when you make those sort of mistakes against Real Madrid, the thing with Real Madrid is even if they get outplayed in the game, they still are able to make up with it based on their ability to defend and their ability to be resilient and how clinical their attackers are. And they were clinical that day. Their only good opportunity in the first half, Vinicius Jr. slots it away after a mistake. Then the Real Madrid meant Bayern Munich in the second half after going up 2-1. Rodrigo, he has his back to turn. Kim Min-jae makes one mistake. Rodrigo makes him pay, drawing the penalty. Vinicius Jr., he's never missing that in that time, in that place. They get that goal. And, 2-2 was a fantastic result for them, especially the way that the game went. That's a fantastic result for them. And then they go into the Bernabeu and, they actually were the protagonist in the Bernabeu, honestly, especially in that first 15-20 minutes in that second half. They were just melting Bayern, especially on that left-hand side, Vinicius. And they were dominating. It just seemed like if anyone was going to get a breakthrough, it was Real Madrid. And then one counter-attack happens, and Alphonso Davies with his weak foot just strikes it so true right into the dagger of Real Madrid hearts to make it 1-0 for Bayern and give them the lead on aggregates. And in that situation, again, it's a mental resilience and mental toughness by Real Madrid that gets them out of that hole. In that situation, a lot of teams would just, collapse. Not with Real Madrid, not with the culture and heritage that they have. They continued to attack. They ended up actually scoring a goal shortly right after. It ended up getting drawn out for VAR. And they continued to pressure. And even though time is going, ticking off, you don't see a sense of desperation, a sense of panic. They still continue to play their football. And, they're just waiting for the opportunity. And when you make a mistake the way Manuel Neuer made, and you realize, and when you know how, clinical this Real Madrid team is, they were going to take advantage of that mistake. 100 out of 100 times, Manuel Neuer slips in a ball, loses a ball, and Jose Lu is there to tap in to make it 1-1. And in that moment, it was 87th, 88th minute. I looked at the two people I was watching the game with, my friends, and we just knew. They knew in their eyes. One of them was a Bayern fan. Even he knew this game was not going to extra time because Real Madrid were taking care of it at that point before then. And that's exactly what happened. It's just the nature of Real Madrid, and this Champions League final that they reached is not as extreme, but very similar to the Champions League final they reached 2 years ago against Liverpool, where they ended up winning it at the end. In the fact that, against Chelsea, come back last minute, then take it to extra time, win that. Against PSG, being down for 3 of the halves, getting completely outplayed, having a miraculous comeback in the second half. Against Manchester City, getting completely played off the park for 179 minutes, but in that last minute and extra time, ended up getting 2 goals to push it into extra time, then winning in extra time. It's just the story of Real Madrid, and it's quite remarkable here. Now, as far as the final, how do they make sure there's no slip-up? Well, they just have to continue to be mentally resilient. They have to continue to be clinical, and if they do that, I just see no way Dortmund gets through. It's looking like Courtois is going to start, especially with Lunin being sick and him having to travel on a different form of transportation for a team just buries his chances of playing in this final. And I just think if Courtois is up to it and he doesn't make any sort of mistakes to give Borussia Dortmund some breakthroughs, I really find this very, very hard for Borussia Dortmund to be able to get over the line. We're going to take a short break here. When I come back, I'm going to assess France's chances to win their first European championship with this generation of players.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, I discussed Real Madrid's journey to the final and how do they make sure there's no slip-up. I now get to have a chance to assess France's chances to win their first European championship under this generation. Now, they've won European championships before. Let me just get that out of the way. But under this generation of player, this golden generation of France, they have not been able to win the European championship. Last Euros, they got eliminated in the round of 16 by Switzerland. The Euros before that, which is kind of pre-generation, but it was the first tournament they've had under Deschamps. They lost to the final in Portugal at home. This is, now this is their chance to get this opportunity, and they have a brilliant team. They have a brilliant roster. You can't deny this. This 23-man squad with Kylian Mbappe, Antoine Griezmann, their defense, you look at it, Konate, Theo Hernandez, Jules Koundé, Benjamin Pavard, Ferland Mendy, Saliba, Upamecano. The midfield with Camavinga, Griezmann, Kante, Rabiot, Chouameni, Zaire Emery, Griezmann, Fofana. And then the attack with Coman, Barcola, Dembele, Giroud, Colomwani, Mbappe, Thuram. This is a brilliant, brilliant team. A lot of very talented players. But you see a little bit of a weakness in this team compared to the one we saw in the World Cup of 2018. When you see it, you think the starting 11, is very, very solid, even though Griezmann is going to have to play in a more midfield position. But when you look at the bench, the depth, they don't have the depth that they had last season. That number 9 slot, besides Giroud, who's playing in his last international tournament, you have a Colomwani who hasn't had the greatest of seasons. Thuram, he can play that role, but that's not where he is his best. the winger position besides Dembele on that right hand side, his option behind him, the depth is not really there. And, I don't know. I think this France team might be on a downward trajectory. And I think that's going to be a crazy thing to say because you still have, young up and coming players like a Camavinga, a Chouameni, that are, just making a name for themselves, But yeah, I just think, wow. And then defensively, Didier Deschamps, he has not, he's been a little bit reluctant of playing Saliba, and I fully expect Saliba not to have any sort of role within this team in the European Championship, not in games that matter, maybe the third group stage games and all that, but in terms of games that matter, I don't fully expect. So that center-back partnership, I'm going to be very, interested to see what he goes. He loves playing Pavard. What is he gonna go with the partnership of Konate and Pavard? I don't think Pavard is best playing in a back four as a center back. I think he played at Inter Milan as center back, one of the outside center backs, but I don't think he can play in a back four as one of the center backs. I think Koundé and Theo Hernandez are very, very solid when it comes to right back, left back. I think they have those two slots taken up. But that center back partnership, I want to see where he goes. He's played the last tournament, it was Upamecano and Varane. But Upamecano, for me, he's just a mistake waiting to happen, and I wouldn't trust him in this situation. But Didier Deschamps, he has shown his trust in Upamecano. So, and Konate has also been the third option behind Upamecano and Varane at that last international tournament. In fact, Konate played in, I believe it was the semifinals against Morocco, whenever I believe it was Upamecano not available. So I think it's gonna be Konate and Upamecano or Pavard, who he's always wanted to play. But either way, I just think that center back partnership is gonna be very, very shaky for me. Now France, they take on the Netherlands. No, they take on Austria in the opening game, then they take on the Netherlands, and they take on the Poland. Now, there's 3 teams that move on, more likely than not, with 4 out of this, I believe it was 6 or something, that third place teams moving on. So, there's no group of death really, no matter what, when it comes to that, because third place team. But this is a rather, more difficult group, in my opinion. Netherlands, talent-wise, they have, they're in the upper echelon of the European Championship teams. And then Austria is, I think, a team that, should not be slumped on with Ralf Rangnick, the way that they've came in, the style of football they play. They're not going to be afraid to press up against these opposition. And I think they can suffocate some of these teams. They'll be playing kind of a home tournament in the fact that they're neighbors. They'll have a lot of Austrian fans that will be willing, that will kind of go across the border in the game. That are, they played the first game in Dusseldorf, Germany, which it happens to be, not far from Austria. So yeah, I could see why. I could see Austria having a big sort of impact at this tournament. They have France, they're the favorites in that group. Don't get me wrong, and they should move on comfortably, but it'll be interesting to see. I think last few international tournaments, France has went into their final game not really having to play their full team. I don't think they'll be in that situation at these European Championship. That's the bold take I will have. I think they'll go into that final game against Poland, who they take on in their third game, having to get a result to win the group or whatever in their situation. But for me, I definitely think they're still number 1 in the power rankings just based on the talent that they have and the success that they've proven in international tournaments. But, it could go wrong. Mbappe hasn't had his best of season. Now, you've seen it. He's always able to turn it around and perform well for France. But he hasn't had his best of season this season. You're relying on Olivier Giroud, who's literally playing his last international games his last really games at the highest level, and the fact that he's gonna go to MLS after this. So yeah, no. But Deschamps is a brilliant tournament manager. He is a brilliant tournament manager. When you see the record that he's had with France in the international tournaments, it's absolutely phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal. Now, I do want to know with this French team, if they have Griezmann in the midfield role again, what is the midfield that he goes? Is he willing to trust? Now, Kanté, if he's in the squad, I'm assuming that Deschamps, based on what he's seen in the Saudi leagues, thinks he can have an immediate impact in this team. Now, does he think about, potentially bringing Kanté into the starting lineup if he's playing very, very good football? And then if that's the case, that gives, and if he's playing at his top level, I think that gives Deschamps a chance to play Griezmann and another player that doesn't have to do, that can give you a little bit of a forward input. Somebody like a Zaire Emery, instead of having to play an Adrien Rabiot that did a lot of work at that last World Cup, covering spaces for a guy like Mbappe that didn't come back. Adrien Rabiot and Griezmann, they did a lot of defensive work. I think if Kanté is able to be at the level to, be a starter at this European Championship, I think it gives license to Griezmann to play more of a attacking role, forward role, playing under Griezmann, and it also potentially gives Deschamps an opportunity to play with somebody a little bit more forward thinking than Rabiot, somebody like a Zaire Emery that can come in that area, or somebody else, or Adrien Rabiot himself, just tell him to play more of a forward role. That it can give him the opportunity if N'Golo Kanté has the capacity to play in these European Championship games. He is 32 years old, but that's not crazy old. And if he's in the squad, he is in the squad for a reason. And I think it's a brilliant decision by Deschamps not writing him off, letting his play on the field in Saudi determine it, not just this club that he played for. I think it's a brilliant move by Didier Deschamps bringing him in the squad if he deems that N'Golo Kanté is playing at the right levels. And I think it's a decision that should be commended by the French fans, and I think it could go really, really right for them at this championship, bringing in a guy like Kanté. Now, and if he's fit and firing, he's also great support for the center backs, who no matter who you play with Konate, whether it is Upamecano or Pavard, it's gonna be there's going to be questions of that back line. There's going to be questions. And if you play a guy like Upamecano, it could lead to mistakes. Now, this is obviously, I would play William Saliba, who's had a brilliant season in the Premier League. But we know Didier Deschamps, he's just been reluctant to go that way. So that is what it is at the end. It is what it is at the end of the day. We cannot really question Didier Deschamps because he's had success to a whole different level that, managers could only dream of. We're going to take a short break here. When we come back, I'm going to assess the transfers rumors going on in world football. Before the break, we assessed France's chances to win their first European Championship. With this generation, we now are going to discuss some of the top transfer rumors going on in world football. We start off with Manchester City. They're reportedly favored to sign Bruno Guimaraes, and midfielder that will give a good compliment to a guy like Rodri. He come in and he does very similarly to what Kovacic would do. He'd be probably a bit more better player version of Kovacic. Pep Guardiola, that's that kind of player. He's a brilliant player, and Manchester City, when you have that much money, you can basically do whatever you want. And then Manchester City fans and Pep Guardiola, they decide to criticize people talking about the money that they spend, saying, we don't spend that much money, we spend like normal amount of team. You win the Premier League and you go on and you sign another $100 million player. I'll probably sit on your bench for your first few months. If I was Bruno Guimaraes, I'd make the better career choice for me and go to a club like Liverpool, be part of this new revive under Arne Slot. He can make, that midfield revival happened last season, and, they need that one player to take them to the next step. I think Guimaraes, he goes in, he fits perfectly with a guy like McAllister and Szoboszlai. I think that midfield three is a brilliant midfield and could really be the future of Liverpool. But that's up to him to make. Obviously, money talks. Dani Olmo is a guy that I believe, he's a few years, he's been at RB Leipzig few years long. I think he's a very, very good attacking midfield player. He has the capacity to score a goal from long range. He's very, very gifted on the ball, doesn't lose the ball, is good in possession-oriented teams, retaining the ball, being a good winger, not a very vertical winger, but just, just very good in possession and retaining the ball and getting in the right positions. He's a very, very good player. And, Liverpool, Manchester City, Bayern, they all eye him. I think that's the type of guy. He'll be a perfect fit at any club, just with the talent that he has. I think whatever club he goes to, he'll make a very good impact. Ian Maatsen, he is unsure of Chelsea's future after the Borussia Dortmund loan. Ian Maatsen, he, honestly, he's a very good left back. And he's proving that in that second half that he's having at Borussia Dortmund. You cannot argue that. He's been very, very good. Now, Chelsea are kind of cash-strapped and they're wanting to sell players. You see that they're trying to sell players like a Conor Gallagher and a Trevor Chalobah. And if you can sell a guy like Ian Maatsen and get a good fee for him, that's going to be automatic profit no matter what, from the fact that he came up to the academy. And, you do have Cucurella and Ben Chilwell still at the club. But I think Ian Maatsen gives you a little bit something different with pace, his ability, his capacity to go up and down, his energy levels. I think he's a very, very good player. But, Chelsea are cash-strapped. And, I think it's a move that Chelsea are probably going to have to make, even though I believe they're better options than him. Let's discuss the next rumor. Sorry, Conor Gallagher, he's set to go on a move. Aston Villa potentially set their sights on him. I think Conor Gallagher could be a good move for Aston Villa. Get another workforce into that midfield. He's a good complement to John McGinn and Douglas Luiz. He'll do a lot of the work unseen, and then he can also give you more and play more in an advanced position, play in front of John McGinn and Douglas Luiz. I think that could be a good move for Aston Villa. They're going to need the legs, his energy, playing at European football next season. He's a player with high energy, and you could take advantage of that. I think that's a good move for them. Now, as far as managerial concerns, the Enzo Maresca to Chelsea, those are, they're getting almost official. So that is something I believe, Chelsea, they want to play a more possession-oriented style of play. And, Chelsea haven't generally been a team that really cared about the style of play. Now under this new ownership group that has came in, they want to, they want to play more offensive, possession-oriented football. It's not something I'm a huge fan of, but, that is what it is, So it looks like Enzo Maresca, he's going to be a Chelsea player. Alphonso Davies, he's going to be a Real Madrid player. Or not, he's not going to be a Real Madrid player, but, it was rumored Real Madrid was very rumored highly throughout the last few months, but it's looking like Chelsea and Manchester City are going to try to rival that according to reports. Now, can Chelsea afford that in the fact that they wanting to sell players? How are they going to be able to bring in a guy like Alphonso Davies? It's confusing to me, and yes, left back is a club of a little bit concern, but you're gonna have to pay a decent fee for him, despite the fact that he only has a year left. Don't see that realistically. Manchester City, yeah, they have the money to do it, but it really comes down to I think he wants to go to Real Madrid. He'll lock up that Real Madrid left back position for the next decade or so. And the fact that Ferland Mendy, he's probably going to be gone. And to be honest, he couldn't really, he's a poor man's Alphonso Davies. So I think he, I think his move to Real Madrid is highly likely. Mbappe, he's going to be announcing his deal before the Euros. It's going to be with Real Madrid. So I just wanted to let y'all know that, Madrid, sources say Real Madrid plan to, announce Mbappe's deal before the Euros. So that, Mason Greenwood, Borussia Dortmund have not ruled out Mason Greenwood as a possible future candidate to bring in. He's going to return to loan back to United. And you've seen the way, United, they're not going to keep Mason Greenwood. And you've seen what they were able to do with Jadon Sancho. So they consider doing that for Greenwood. They have been under a little bit of criticism based on what happened with Greenwood's past. But in terms of the football side of it, I think Greenwood, the perfect club to go to get his career back on track would be Borussia Dortmund. I think they can do a similar job with him that they were able to do with Jadon Sancho, bringing him in. I think Mason Greenwood, when it comes to the football side of it, I think it will be a brilliant move for both Mason Greenwood and Borussia Dortmund, because there's still talent there within Mason Greenwood, talent to take advantage of, to capitalize on. And Borussia Dortmund, and for Mason Greenwood, a perfect opportunity to do that is at a club like Borussia Dortmund. Yeah, apart from that, there has not been much rumors going on. The European Championship is going to do it's going to have a big impact on the next, signings. You see international tournaments, they give platform to the clubs. So I feel like whenever the European Championship starts, I think the rumor mill is going to start going heavy. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sport Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Thank you once again and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
I don't wanna go to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.